My next guest, one of my favorites, is here, Professor Wolff. How you doing, man? You doing okay today?
Okay, sir. And how about you?
I am doing well. I am doing better that you are joining me. We're joined with Professor Richard Wolff. He's Professor of Economics Emeritus at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, a visiting professor in the graduate program in International Affairs of the New School University in New York City. He is founder of Democracy at Work, host of their nationally syndicated show, Economic Update. His latest book, The System is the Sickness When Capitalism Fails to Save Us from Pandemics or Itself. And it is available with his other book, Understanding Socialism and Understanding Marxism, at democracyatwork.info. Professor, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Um,
Yours is I don't mind saying it, and I hope you can handle the compliment. But yours is a very important show, and I'm here because I want to be part of that.
well, thank you for that. I do. I think I can bear the compliment. Thank you for that. Um, you did a video recently that goes a bit beyond economics, and maybe it doesn't go beyond economics. You can correct me if I'm overstepping in regards to my take on this. But you were talking about effectively the United States effectively breaking its own policy and breaking law by murdering 80 fishermen or 80 people in boats off the coast of Venezuela. And what's wild about this is that the fact that the United States is trying to overthrow the Maduro government doesn't seem to be the big media headlight or headline. The fact that they've murdered 80 people in these boats, again, doesn't seem to be the thing that shocks media per se. What seems to be bothering them is the fact that they double tapped a boat, murdering people who were in those boats, who they had no idea who these people were, and that they take issue with the fact that the people were hanging off the side of the boats when they murdered the people in the boats. That seems mind-blowing to me. It's not the fact that they blew up a boat that they had no idea who was in the boat. It's the fact that they double tapped it and murdered the people after the boat was apparently already destroyed or already hit the very first time. And you're pointing out that a country that's willing to do this and willing to just flagrantly ignore law, is willing to also ignore domestic law. Why was that the tenor? Did they have an economic dimension associated with it? Or was it just the fact that it was so beyond the pale?
Well, I don't think it's an either or. I think the way, first of all, your question is absolutely appropriate. I don't believe in the boundaries that American universities observe. I remember when I was a student in college, I would raise my hand in I don't know, an economics class and ask a question, and then have the professor look at me, clearly able from his or her face, they didn't know the answer, tell me that I should take that question to some other professor in another department. Uh, Wait a minute. The human being, our brains don't have little lines or little gates. Think this, don't bring in that. That's not the way anybody ever learned anything. So it's not appropriate. I understand you can know some things better or more than you know other things, but it's more and less. It's not either or. And it's a kind of queer behavior, I find. So I think your question is absolutely right. For example, how you separate politics from economics strikes me as a stupid enterprise, since they're never separate. Every economic reality I've ever encountered is full of politics. And
Mhm.
now, to answer your question, everything that looks like a political act has economics wrapped in it. So let's do Venezuela. Number
Mhm.
one, Venezuela represents no imminent political threat. You do not go to war and you do not murder people if you are not threatened. That's why we have a law which says the only time you can justify killing anybody is if you can show that it was defending yourself against being killed. And if you can't show that, you can't do that. When we discover that police have killed somebody and the bullet went into the back of that person, we know what happened here, and it was murder. It was not self-defense. The cop was not endangered. People hanging on to the edge of a boat in the water 1,000 miles away are not a threat to the United States. No way, shape, or form. Therefore, anything like what was done is a violation of American law, international law, every ethics that I've ever heard of, and every morality that I've ever encountered. And there is no excuse. And you're right. You're right to notice that it is, let me use the honest word, it is sick to focus on the two people hanging onto the edge of the boat who were killed when there's 85, roughly 85 people who were sitting in a boat who were killed in the 3 or 4 months before that. Why is one a big deal and the other one isn't?
Yeah.
Two people, 85 people, everybody dead. It seems to me the story should be, what are we doing? We know, because our government has told us, that the vast majority of legal and illegal drugs coming into the United States do not come from Venezuela. It's not a particularly important source of that. Other countries are, but not Venezuela. Number one. Number two, and this I like to stress to people, we have a drug problem in the United States. Unless you've been sleeping, you know that. Everybody knows it. I can get drugs. I live in New York City. I can get them wherever I want. I remember my son, when we were living in Connecticut, going to high school and letting me know there were drugs I didn't even hear of that he could get at this moment in the gym or outside of the playground. And my daughter likewise. So we know that in the United States, people are being arrested for drug traffic all the time, one place or another. Here's what we do in America, because it's our law. We arrest those people if the cops can catch them. You arrest them, you confiscate drugs if they have them on them. You then give that person a lawyer, and you give that person the right to be presumed innocent unless and until proven otherwise. Then they go into a procedure with a jury and a judge. And if all after all of that, and they have a lawyer to defend them, if they are found guilty, they are given a prison sentence. But we don't kill these people. We
Right.
never kill. Well, if we don't kill our own people who have gone through a procedure and been found guilty of what we call a crime, we don't kill them, and I'm in favor of not killing them. But then there is absolutely no justification for killing those people in the boats who were not shown their evidence against them, who were not given a lawyer, who had no jury, no judge. They had Donald Trump executioner who decided who and what they were, and through Mr. Hedgetheth, even though he's running away from responsibility in a soldierly way,
Hmm.
in order to kill these people. By the way, this is going to come back to haunt us. There is now the wife, the widow of one of the people killed, who has begun a lawsuit, I believe in Venezuela, but it doesn't matter where, saying that her husband was killed illegitimately. And she's right. And my guess is she will eventually prevail, although that'll be in the future, and the same media you point to will ignore it. Now, the
Yeah.
economics. There is, of course, something going on about this effort to topple Mr. Maduro. Venezuela has oil, and there's a great irony. The countries whose great luck was to happen to be sitting on a piece of land under which was lots of oil, which could have and should have brought them all kinds of lucky benefits because it's there as opposed to 50 miles either way elsewhere. Instead, what could have and should have been a blessing has proven to be a curse.
Yeah.
The United States wants access and control of that oil. That's it. The rest of Venezuela is absolutely of no interest at all. Don't need it, don't want it, can't control it. Venezuela is a very large country. We're not talking a little place. We're talking a very big place. Huge
Mm.
mountains, jungles. You think you're going to send the American military in there and they're going to be able just to. Look, we went into Vietnam and the United States was defeated. The enemy in Vietnam was the North Vietnamese Communist Party. You know who runs Vietnam today? The North Vietnamese Communist Party. They won, we lost. We're not there anymore. They run the show. That defines winner and loser. In Afghanistan, our enemy, our US, was the Taliban. You know who runs Afghanistan today? The Taliban.
Taliban.
They won, we lost. Ukraine, we're in the process of losing again. Okay, all of these Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, these are among the poorest countries in the world. We are among the richest countries in the world with an enormous military apparatus. They won, we lost. Americans have a wonderful way of not seeing what they don't want to see. But I'm not into that. I think I learned it's better to see it, however troubling it is, than to pretend it isn't there.
Right.
So we want control of that oil, largely because much of the rest of the world's oil is slipping out of our control. Let me give you three examples. One, the largest source of oil in the world is the Middle East. And the biggest country producing oil is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, for those who don't know, recently joined the BRICS. The BRICS are an alliance of countries centered around the People's Republic of China. And that's where the oil is going to be going in the years ahead. You know why? Because China's economic and industrial development is more rapid than anywhere in the world, much more rapid than what we have in the United States, which has been true for the last 25 years. And they're the ones who need the oil. They're making their alliances to secure the oil. When they secure the oil, it puts us in a little bit of a problem. We have a lot of oil inside the United States, but number two oil producer after Saudi Arabia is Russia. And they're not going to be real eager to give it to the United States for all the obvious reasons. Number three, Nigeria. And Nigeria is an independent country that is, let's put it this way, not so friendly to the United States for all kinds of reasons. And you notice Mr. Trump has recently made noises about Nigeria. There, he can't talk about drugs because that's not an issue. I mean, it isn't in Venezuela, but he could try because people kind of know Latin America's got something to do with drugs, but not Nigeria. So in Nigeria, he had to come up with another story. And here's the story. Nigeria is a country that has a large Muslim population and a large Christian population, and they clash sometimes. So now he's going to talk about, going in there and protecting the Christians and all of that stuff. But this is make believe. This is designed so the media can talk about aggressive American activity in the world. According to the United Nations and everything I know, one country is not supposed to interfere in the activities of another. Last week, while the country was focused on the murdering by Americans of those folks in boats around Venezuela, the President of the United States pardoned the former president of Honduras, if I remember the story correctly, who had been convicted of drug trafficking in the United States, bringing millions and millions of dollars of cocaine. That guy was arrested. That guy had very good lawyers. He had a jury. He had a judge. But he was found guilty and given a prison sentence. 2 weeks after he began his sentence, Mr. Trump freed him. This is the man who wants us to believe that he's murdering people in boats because he's so concerned about the drug traffic, and he just gave a free pass to a proven, convicted guy who had all the legal protections that were not given to the people in those boats. It
Yeah.
is so outrageous, Jamar, that it really, even for me, and I'm used to seeing this stuff, this is gross. This is really gross stuff. It doesn't stop at murder. It doesn't stop at the hypocrisy of letting the other guy go. I mean, what are you doing? And the answer is you've got people here in power, and they're willing to do anything.
Yeah.
Watch them now. Watch as Trump and Hegseth are trying to hang it all on some obscure admiral, hoping he takes the fall. I mean, it's so transparent. Everybody who isn't, lost in MAGA land can see what's going on here. And you're the last thing you said, I want to just underscore my agreement. People who use power the way Trump and his associates are doing don't stop at a national border. If they're going to do it in Venezuela, and if they're pulling another stunt in Nigeria, think about what they're probably doing in Ukraine. Think about what they're probably doing here in the United States, because they will have the same behavior at home that they show abroad. So if you're feeling safe, it can't happen here. It's already happening here.
Yeah. What do you make of it? This seems like a country that's spiraling, to be honest. I
Yeah.
mean, to go this far in regards to just breaching U.S. law.
Yeah.
And right now, I guess they sent Wickoff and Jared Kushner of all, I don't know why Jared Kushner is there, but okay, Jared Kushner to Ukraine in order to make some kind of deal. The Europeans have gotten together completely against any notion of a deal, even though the deal was a dead letter when it was came up with the 28 points. But whatever. The Europeans have effectively gotten together and are doing any and everything in their power to steal the Russian money because they want to fill budget shortfalls, and they also want to proceed and keep the war going. What is going on with Europe? I know you have ties to various countries in Europe, and so I'm very curious on your take of what has happened to Europe, what is in their minds that gives them this impression that, yeah, we can keep this war going for X number of years more.
Okay, I'm glad you asked. I should explain. My father was French. My mother was German. My father was born in France. My mother was born in Germany. French and German have been languages I've spoken since I've been a child. I was
Yeah,
born in Ohio. I'm an American. I've lived and worked in the United States all my life. But I have, connections to Europe, as you put it, because I'm interested. I can read, the language and all of that. I can't overstate the tragedy and almost the historical profoundness of what's happening in Europe and to Europe. And it's going to affect the whole world. And so here in a thumbnail sketch is what's going on. For most of the last 500 years, Europe thought of itself as the center of the world. It's where the Renaissance happens. It's where Christianity splits into Catholic and Protestant. It's where capitalism arises for the first time. It's where the whole world is brought under the control of a very small number of European countries. the British Empire, the French Empire, for a while the German Empire, and so on. Up until recently, they could think of themselves as the center of the world. Everybody had to learn French, or everybody in the world had to learn English. Oh, wait, the dollar is the world currency. Before that, the British pound was the world currency, and so on. All of that is now over. The world economy is now focused on two powerful centers. One is declining. That's the United States, whose empire over the last century developed, grew very, very powerful, but is now declining. That's why we lose these wars. That's why we're ripping ourselves apart right now. That's why we have a government so desperate that it behaves in the way we've just talked about. Meanwhile, there's another new emerging powerhouse center of the world economy, China and its allies. Where does that leave Europe? Answer: nowhere. Europe is in between. You want to know where cutting edge technology comes from in the world today? It either comes from the United States, Silicon Valley out there in California and all of that, or it comes from China. You want to know who's making electric cars effectively in the world today? China. You know who's developing green energy, solar powered? China. I could go on, but you're getting the picture. Where is Europe? Nowhere. Tell me a single major breakthrough in modern technology that comes from a European country. You can't find it. The European countries are disasters right now. Let me give you example 3. Mr. Starmer in England, popularity 10%. Mr. Macron in France, popularity less than 10%. Mr. Merz in Germany hasn't even been in power for a year, rushing headlong into the toilet. You've got to understand, Mr. Trump is much more popular in the United States, and he's going down than they are. So here's the problem. They unified Europe under the European Union at the turn of the century, from the 20th into our current century. They were supposed to unify so they could be a powerhouse in the world the way the big US was and the way the big China already emerging was. But after 25 years, the United States is tilting down and the Chinese are taking off. The Europeans decay, decline. And one of the reasons is their leadership, Starmer, Macron, Merz, or any of the others. They were unable to overcome the divisions. They were unable to realize the potential of a union. You put all of Europe together, it's bigger than the United States. It's richer than the United States. But that never mattered because they couldn't get themselves together. The Germans didn't trust the French. Neither of them trusted the English. And all of them for good historical reasons. So there's nothing left. And what has to happen now is they have to face the last horrible indignity that makes them look stupid. And I don't ever use that word, but they look stupid to their own people. They made a deal in this war. Russia invades Ukraine. Whatever you think of that particular war, and believe me, it has its good guys and bad guys spread on both sides. But whatever you think, what the Europeans did was declare this is a horrible act by Russia. Really? I'm not sure if you're aware or if your listeners are. There's an annual measurement of corruption in every European country, and they list how well you're doing or not doing. Right? The most corrupt country in Europe for decades has been Ukraine. It is a place where everything and everyone is for sale. That's not a good sign. Russia invades Ukraine. The Europeans decide Ukraine is a cradle of liberty, really, and a cradle of freedom. Oh boy. And we're going to support them against the evil, evil Russians, led by the super evil Mr. Putin. Wow. Wow. Okay, how are you going to defeat Mr. Putin? Because he has an advantage. His country is very large, and your countries are not. Well, we're all going to get together and we're going to sanction him. We're going to bring him to his knees. I'm quoting you now, what leaders, you and I know that early in the year 2022, when that war started, Mr. Biden, our president, will bring Russia to its knees. The ruble will collapse. None of that ever happened. None of it. Why? Because Russia is a big, powerful country. But there's a second reason. Standing right behind Russia, supporting it every inch of the way, is the People's Republic of China. And that's where the wealth and the power comes from. The Europeans didn't know what to do. They couldn't win anything. So they decided the great punishment, and you're going to love this, the great punishment is to say to the Russians, we're not going to buy your oil and gas. In the Russian economy, that's very important. Russia is one of the places, as I mentioned before, where oil and gas exist in incredible quantities, sort of like the United States in that way. And they sell a lot of it to Europe, particularly to Germany. And they sell it at incredibly low prices. Germany became an industrial powerhouse over the last 40 years for one overwhelming reason. They got the cheapest energy anyone trying to develop industry anywhere in the world was able to get. Russian oil and gas coming through pipelines until they blew one up, coming through cheap as hell. Okay, they decided we won't buy your oil and gas. That'll bring you to your knees. Mr. Putin took an airline trip, one to Beijing and one to New Delhi. In Beijing, he asked Xi Jinping, would you please buy the oil I can't sell to the Europeans anymore? Sure. Then he went to Mr. Modi in New Delhi and he said, would you please buy the oil? Sure. They were eager to get cheap oil and gas for their industrialization. So this big plan of Europe went nowhere. But what it did do is make all European businesses have to pay 3 times the price for their energy that they used to be able to get Russian energy for. Above all, from the United States, we sell them our liquefied natural gas as a substitute. And the Europeans destroyed. Their economy wrecked. Why? They can't compete. They have to pay more for energy than any of their competitors in the United States or Japan or anywhere else. So they're falling apart. The leaders there are revealed to have made the worst mistakes leaders can. They're desperate. And the only way they see forward is to endanger the peace of the world by beating the war drums against Russia, making Russia terrible, making Mr. Putin another Stalin or so, just on and on, a kind of hysterical anti-Russian cuckoo, which is simply a way for them to cover their rear end. They want people to think about the dangers of Russia rather than the failures of the politicians of Europe who have led their people into a total economic dead end. We're living through all of that. And then when Mr. Trump, who told them to do all these things, says, "Oh, and by the way, I'm going to hit you with a tariff," I don't care what happens to you. Then they've been led down the garden path by a guy who, when they get to the bottom of the path, kicks them in the rear end. No, they're nowhere. And if you think Mr. Trump is desperate, and he is, as the American empire declines, he can always look at the Europeans and he can see people more desperate than he is.
He is. One last question that I want to hit you with before I let you go: the deficit. So I guess this goes into the economies of dying empires also. I mean, Europe, several empires apparently are economically dead, if not dying.
Yeah.
But we are 7 trillion dollars in debt, give or take $1 trillion. When the quote big beautiful bill comes to fruition after the midterms, that number is going to skyrocket. Effectively, we're taking money from the poor and giving it to the rich
Yep.
with that particular bill. What is the effect of that on the country as a whole and individuals as a whole? And individuals as a whole sounds weird, but on people themselves in the country itself, how do we manage that? I mean, we're talking about something that's going to go 40 trillion, 50 trillion without any inability to ever pay that money back.
That's right. Well, there's several things to understand about it. First of all, the very existence of a deficit and the accumulating national debt is a sign that the political system is unable or unwilling to raise taxes. You don't have to borrow money if the government has raised taxes. Taxes is what the government is supposed to do. Tax businesses, tax individuals, use that money to perform the activities we want the government to do, to run the harbors and defend us and run our schools and all the things that we need done collectively or as a community. If the United States government were willing to tax corporations and the rich, then they would raise the money to pay for the things they do. They wouldn't have to borrow anything. So no one should think of the deficit as some kind of event that drops out of the sky like, rain or snow. That's not what this is. This is a political decision. So let me answer the question. Why isn't the government taxing corporations and the rich? And the answer is corporations and the rich have in their hands the profit this country generates. And they use that money in part to buy the politicians who will then not tax them. That's smart for them to do. That they've understood that. If you're the people who get the profits, if you're the rich, and you're in a sea of people who aren't rich, you're vulnerable. You better take steps to prevent those who are not rich from looking at you and saying, wait a minute, they should be taxed according to their ability to pay, which is part of the American system. But they've bought politicians who do not tax them. Well, then how is the government going to function? Answer: it borrows. That it borrows the money it needs to do. And now, if you understand what I'm about to tell you, you will understand the American capitalism. Where does the government of the United States go to borrow the money that it's not taxing from corporations and the rich? And the answer, you're going to love it, is corporations and the rich. It goes to them and it says, would you please lend us the money? And the corporations and the rich, giggling to themselves, say, sure, you've been so nice to not tax us. We'll take the money you could have taxed away from us, and instead we'll lend it to you, because that way you have to give it back to us, plus pay us interest while we wait. Now, for corporations and the rich, this is a no-brainer. Of course, they prefer the government to borrow the money from them rather than to tax it away. But for the rest of us, you, me, the mass of people, this is not good. And I'm going to tell you why. We have 38 trillion is the number right now of a national debt. When the government borrows, it has to pay interest. Well, where is the government going to get the money to pay interest to $38 trillion worth of debt? The answer is you and me, the taxes we pay right now, a sizable portion of the income tax you pay every April, of the tax you pay on the motor fuel, on cigarettes, on alcohol, all the things that the government uses to tax, a huge portion of that doesn't go for any service to the people. It goes to pay interest on the national debt, which means we are paying interest that finds its way into the hands of the corporations and the rich who lent the money to the United States government. Last step, foreign countries also lend to the US government. The two biggest single lenders to the United States government are Japan and China. All right, China owes 750 billion roughly of US debt. That means that the United States government collects taxes from you and me and everybody else and takes a portion of them and pays the interest to the People's Republic of China. Tens of billions of dollars a year of our taxes go to them, which they can use to do what? Develop the Red Army of China, among other things. Yes, you have to enjoy the irony of. And why is this crazy shit happening, if you pardon my Spanish? Why? It's happening because American politicians don't want to tax corporations and the rich because they know that if they do, those corporations and those rich people will give their money to the opponent of this politician at the next election, and they'll be ancient history. We are trapped in a capitalist system here that is destroying us. And the real question, I'll leave you with this: are we going to let the decline of this system take us all down with it? That's the big question.
Professor Richard Wolff, you have my deepest appreciation. Always enjoyed these conversations. Professor Wolff, he is professor of economics emeritus, University of Massachusetts Amherst, and a visiting professor at the graduate program in international affairs of New School University in New York City. He's founder of Democracy at Work and host of their nationally syndicated show, Economics Update. His latest books, When the System is the Sickness, or I'm sorry, The System is the Sickness, When Capitalism Fails to Save Us from Pandemics or Itself. And it is available with his other books, Understanding Socialism, Understanding Marxism, at democracyatwork.info. Professor, you have my deepest appreciation. Always appreciate you joining me. Thank you for this.
Same here, and I look forward to talking with you again soon.
Have a good one. Be safe. All right. Shout out to Professor Wolff. Always appreciate that conversation. Yeah, man, a dying empire. And the things that a dying empire does when it doesn't seem to have solutions for the fact that it is a dying